Simple.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what. Oh, you said about the.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I remember
that so-and-so didn't believe in the
Roy Moore
didn't believe
in the Constitution as it was written. Right, because he's an illiterate idiot.
We're live. Welcome to the Timkast.
They caught that illiterate idiot?
Yeah.
All right.
It's all right.
We were talking about Chuck Todd being an illiterate idiot, not Roy Moore. Just so, I don't know when people came in on that conversation. But.
Yeah. Well, this is something that you talked about on your show recently,
yes.
right? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of it. What's the gist of this? This was a congressman?
No, Chuck Todd is a MSNBC guy.
Talking head.
Illiterate talking head. And he made this big deal about Roy Moore because Roy Moore just won the Republican ticket for Senate in Alabama. Yes, Alabama. Yeah. And he made this big deal about Roy Moore's saying that our rights come from God. They don't come from government. And so then Chuck Todd says it is, this is, what did he call it? Religious right or radical fundamentalist. Radical fundamentalist, that's what he said. Opinion, and it is obvious that he does not believe in the Constitution as it is written. So
implying that the Constitution says our rights come from government.
Yeah, right. And so I did a whole, a 4-minute piece, sort of a rebuttal to Chuck Todd about how, the Declaration of Independence, which laid the foundation for the writing of our Constitution, talks about nature's God, it talks about the supreme ruler of the universe, the supreme judge of the universe, and that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator.
The supreme judge language is in the Declaration.
Yes, okay. Yes, it's the last paragraph.
Isn't it also in another instrument? Or no, just that?
The Declaration of Independence, the last paragraph of the Declaration of Independence.
I thought maybe it was also in something older.
But the Constitution, the preamble, talks about securing the blessings of liberty. Well, the B in blessing is capitalized, which for them is a significant of emphasis to them. And where do you get blessings from?
Yeah.
You have to have a blesser, which would refer back to the Declaration of Independence text of being endowed by a creator, which is also capital C.
So it's clear it's what the founders believed. So to follow Chuck Todd's logic, then the guys who wrote the Constitution, who apparently shared the same view as Roy Moore, then would not believe in the Constitution as it's written. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. And it doesn't mean you have to agree with what they believed, but it is what they believed.
Right.
And so it's obviously not contradictory. It's not mutually exclusive to then believing the Constitution as he's applying.
Right. You don't have to believe what they believed, but if you believe that our rights come from men and their government, then you must also believe that those men and those governments can take those rights at their whim, which means you have no rights. You have privileges.
Right. Because the capital B, the deity, that approach, there is no taking away. It's given.
Well, even if you
it's always there.
Right, but even if you don't believe in the whole deity, natural law by the nature of our existence as human beings,
the universe,
right?
As it were.
We are born free.
Born free.
We are not born into the right to have other people own us or for the right to own other people. And the free nature upon which we exist is fundamental to the understanding that government doesn't give rights. So I like to put it this way. Do you need government to have life? Of course not. I mean, you have life absent government. Do you need government to possess property? Well, the answer is no, because before...
It's at the center of what people are saying right now, though.
Right.
Like, what you just said is an absolute truth with a capital T, right? You do not need government to have life. But so many Americans are vested in the necessity to have government to sustain life.
Right.
That's this.
Well, but that's different.
Dependence.
That's dependency. That's not creation, right? So
Certainly not.
government does not give you life.
No.
Right? You can be in servitude to a master, dependent upon that master for the sustaining of your life. But the master never, that government master never gave you that spark of life.
Yeah, so that's what they're saying. What you said is what they're saying is not that government gives life, but that we need government to sustain life. Without government, we cannot sustain life. Well, that's the definition of a master. You're talking about slavery. You're talking about dependency.
Right.
Right.
And so I think if you would talk to those same people and say, well, you're in slavery, you're in dependency, you're dependent on the government, they would probably object to that notion. But that's exactly what they're defining by saying, we have to have, like you hear all the time, we have to have government to have X, Y, Z.
Right.
And so we've been transformed.
But even that is a falsehood, because we had lots of things before we had government doing those things. I mean, we can go back to the basics of basics. Number one, government doesn't give you the spark of life, okay? We had life, people being born long before governments. Government doesn't give you the right to have property. Long before there were governments, there were people living in teepees and huts and caves and fashioning tools and, And the third aspect is government. You don't need government to have liberty. You don't need, and the fourth aspect is you don't need government to protect those things. Because we were being born, having property, engaging in our daily activities with liberty, and we can talk about the difference between liberty and freedom, and protecting all of those things long before governments ever existed.
But in your talk, specifically in your genealogy talk, you there are instances of devices or instruments that do protect liberties. So you can't get away entirely with saying that we don't need government to protect liberty.
I didn't say we didn't need it. Okay. What I'm saying is government doesn't provide you with those things. If you need government to provide you with life, you're a slave.
Okay.
If you need government to secure your property, you're not a free person. You are an indentured servant. If you need government to provide you with liberty, that's not liberty that they're providing you with.
Right.
If you need government to protect your life, your liberty, and your property, then you are not a living person. You are a dead man.
The point is the people who wanted their liberty protected created government for that purpose.
Right, and that's what the Declaration of Independence says. It says governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. And it explains why. To secure these rights. Okay? So it begins saying, the last paragraph, or the Declaration of Independence begins by saying, we hold these truths to be self-evident, meaning they prove themselves, they're not created, they prove themselves over history. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. And then it lists among these, which is one of my favorite legal terms, among these. It means we're making a list, but it's not the whole thing. Right?
Among these, right? There's an opening. There's
life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. These are the three big umbrellas that we use, but there are other out there. And then it says, and to secure these rights, the antecedent being those that are endowed by your Creator, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. The only reason government ever exists is to secure our rights, not to provide them, not to create them, but to secure them.
Okay.
Nor to provide comfort and stuff. That's what we've transformed into. It's no longer a government that is to secure and defend rights, but now it's become a government that provides stuff.
Yeah.
And
KrisAnne Hall, welcome to the Timkast. Thank you so much for being here, and thanks for jumping right in with me. It's kind of how we like to do it.
Are we on video now too?
Yeah, we're live on YouTube.
Hello.
Yep. And you are, KrisAnne Hall, you're an attorney, you're an educator, you are a speaker, wife, mom, right? Am I missing anything? But
author, radio show host, television show host.
Yeah. And this is your husband?
Cook.
JC joining us.
Chef.
Thank you so much for sitting in.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Chef.
Glad to be here.
So was at some point did you go, okay, I'm not marrying simply a woman. I'm marrying a force. Like, was there an epiphany where
he married me long before that happened.
That was prior to the marriage.
Although
the recognition of a force was
early on.
Well,
you knew
prior to marriage.
And you signed
really?
up.
It was? Oh, I did not know that.
Cobb
Oh,
killer.
Dragon Slayer.
Yeah. We had several. I don't want to go into too many details because of incrimination purposes, but there was time before we were married where she took sort of I want to say justice stances where she was defending what is right against.
This is before being a lawyer and everything.
Yeah,
so.
against
Okay.
those in power.
Yeah.
And so this was something early on, and so she's always had a strong sense of justice and what's right, and so I think that, and I would imagine if you spoke to her parents, it probably goes back
further
before that, but
Okay.
yeah, so it's not something that just like the event that drove her into this particular arena. It's not like that happened and it was, oh my God, what have we gotten ourselves into?
Okay.
In that sense. It was more like, yeah, that
next logical
that
step.
figures.
Yeah.
Figures.
Yeah. And that event that we're talking about, that is the run-in that you had with your boss at the time, which was the prosecutor of St. Louis.
No, it was Florida.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
the
Florida
state
Third Circuit.
the state attorney for the Third Judicial Circuit of Florida.
Okay. Why did I think St. Louis? Am I confused?
That's where I'm from.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah. So I've been all over.
Okay, but this sort of fork in the road, this thing occurred in Florida, and you were killing it. You were doing great as an assistant prosecutor.
Yeah,
right?
even by my boss's testimony. Yeah.
Yeah.
He said I was top notch. So.
Yeah, even in the midst of he
Yeah.
fired her, and then they interviewed him on local news, and even then, in the midst of it, he says, no, she was a top-notch attorney, great attorney. And in fact, he said she's a wonderful top-notch attorney. He said, but if she wants to be Sarah Palin, she needs to do something else. I can't have Sarah Palin working in my office. That was his quote.
Damn. So the confluence of the Sarah Palin. So if that had happened, could that have happened if that wasn't timely? If the Sarah Palin Tea Party thing wasn't the way it was at that moment, could the same set of circumstances have happened that caused you to be fired? Did it have to be ignited by the contemporary surroundings of Sarah Palin, what was happening with the Tea Party?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of factors that came into play all at the exact same time.
Okay.
One of those things that are simply beyond the concept of coincidence. There were too many things that had to happen.
Okay.
First and foremost, I mean, I myself classify myself as a recovering liberal. So I first had to come to the realization that socialism is slavery, because I was a hardcore socialist growing up. Then I had to get educated in. I mean, it's just I don't know. Everybody wants to hear the really long story, but I
guarantee you, everybody wants to hear it as much as you want to tell. I promise you.
No, yeah. So when I was in the military, which is first. Mm-hmm. Well, no. First, I was a biochemist. So I have this very logical.
In college.
Yes.
Already graduated with a biochemistry.
Yeah, I was a functioning biochemist
before the military.
Before the military,
okay.
Right. And so from that training, it sort of honed my own logical, systematic dot connecting. I'm a dot connector. I like things to go in patterns and to work into patterns. Went into the military, became a Russian linguist. I learned how to interpret foreign documents, and it's more than just taking words and translating Russian words into English words. There's a whole thing called hermeneutics that comes into play, where you have to know more about the writers and the recipients to understand
nuances.
Yeah, right, because not anything is what it says in just the words on paper. And then got out of the military, went to law school, which still I think is all still in the same brain framework for me, and I learned, one of my favorite professors, Professor Little, said, I'm not here to teach you the law, I'm here to teach you how to think like a lawyer. Yeah. Much to the chagrin of my husband. But all of these processes honed me in a certain direction. And then when I started reading about the Constitution, the foundation of America, and I started realizing that what we were taught in law school had nothing to do with the Constitution at all. They teach constitutional law, which is, at this point today, is practically contrary to the Constitution. It's not even, some kind of parallel or askew. I mean, we're talking completely contrary to the Constitution.
You have a quote from one of your classes that says that law school teaches that judges know more about the Constitution
than the men who wrote it.
Yeah, and that they're saying right now in law school, at least from your experience, that they're questioning how the Constitution can be relevant. That's happening in law school right now?
Absolutely. And it's not just my experience.
That blows my mind.
Well, I've been teaching now for 7 years all across America, and I can tell you every single lawyer/judge who has ever sat in any of my classrooms or shown up for any of my classes flat out told me, yes, that's right. That's happening in all our law schools. Because our law schools base their teaching not on the Constitution or its history, its foundation. They base it on precedent, what one judge says, and it just builds upon builds. And we have become so far removed from the original intent of the Constitution that it's not even recognizable. I graduated from the University of Florida, one of the top 50 law schools in the country, and with 300 in my graduating class, I bet 85-90% of them would tell you they never even had to look at the Constitution throughout their 3 years of law school. Yeah. So it made me angry. It's that justice thing they was talking about. It really ticked me off to find out that we weren't being taught the truth. And then when I found out how simple it was to know the truth.
Yeah.
Because we were taught, it's impossible to know what the founders meant or intended when they wrote the Constitution. So we have to speculate now.
It was like finding El Dorado.
Right.
This mystic search, and they could never be accomplished.
Like it was pounded into a tablet or something.
Yeah.
Right, but they wrote reams and reams and reams about everything they did. I mean, they wrote reams and details about punctuation and this clause and that clause, and it's all available on your cell phone right now.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't even have to go to some dark, spider web filled, musty corner of the Congressional Library.
Secret tomb behind the faces on Mount
National
Rushmore.
Treasure or something.
Right, like a movie.
It is on your stinking cell phone.
Yeah.
And so, I guess that he I don't really think about myself the way my husband describes me, but I guess it just sparked that sort of sense of justice to me and said, I need to know more about this.
Yeah.
I guess that I have also a piece of inner rebel in me. Everybody does, and it made me rebel against what I had been taught because it was all lies.
Yeah. Well, that's demonstration of your modesty, your humility. Most people who are driven and passionate and are a force at something, they don't sit there and go, "Hey, I'm a force." They're just too busy driving and being passionate and going towards what they want to achieve.
I'm just too frustrated that. I can't be arrogant because I'm so frustrated that the ignorance gets such a special seat in society today.
Yeah.
It keeps you humble. So
yeah,
the fact that you want to take people and just go.
Oh, I imagine that's an hourly thing for you. I would think that frustration.
I move from one piece to another, but there's a certain time where you have to protect your own sanity.
Yeah. So a big thing for the past 20 years of my life in terms of conversations about during election cycles and as things come up, the two-party thing is that's a pretty pedestrian conversation now. Everybody seems capable of at least having that conversation, and the concept that it's going to take a third party to disrupt what we were experiencing. It's obviously not working. It's not working.
Yeah.
And
third party,
or no party.
No party.
Or no party, right?
Which
would be a Washington. He warned that this would be the demise.
That's why I say I'm not Republican, Democrat, Libertarian. I'm Washingtonian.
Okay, love that.
I believe that the division of parties creates greater division. Division creates division and creates greater chasms. I mean, this may sound crazy, but I think this is why we see such, we are seeing such ramping up of violence in America, because we are no longer connected with each other as Americans. We are so divided in our stance.
Tribalism.
It's disgusting. Like the CBS official who says, well, at least they were all Trumpers, that they don't deserve to live, they die or something. Was that she was CBS or something?
Yeah, unfortunately you're here with us in the days after the biggest tragedy, the Las Vegas shooting.
Right. So
you're here. I guess it's a blessing that you're able to talk about it and that you're here, but that certainly was an atrocity.
It was, but to have this high-ranking CBS official to get on Twitter and say, I don't have any sympathy because country western singers are all probably Republicans, that is a mental illness, okay?
I couldn't agree with you more.
That is a level of depravity.
Yes.
And I believe Washington talked about that in his farewell address when he called them enormous. I just had the phraseology in my head. I can't think of it right now.
I just listened to you say it when I was getting ready for the show.
Horrors. I mean, the horrors that result. Yeah, the horrors that result from these kind of factions and divisions. We are beginning to see that. And the mainstream media is complicit in that. They have become provocateurs instead of journalists. JC and I, oh my goodness, we landed here in Columbus.
Yeah.
And we're walking out of the, how they have the gate areas that's protected. Everybody that comes on the plane, they come down to the baggage claim area. Before you could even get anywhere, at the stairs where everybody's bottlenecked to go down, you've got the media there with cameras, bright lights, and sticking a microphone in your face saying, are you just now landing from Las Vegas?
Yeah.
It was Columbus Airport?
In the Columbus
Ohio.
Airport.
Yeah, the CBS affiliate, and they were...
You guys flew in from Florida.
Yeah.
Was it ABC?
Well, there was a flight coming in from Las Vegas. And so,
coincidentally.
Yeah, and so they were there with the cameras and the lights and the microphones and just yelling out like carnival barkers. Are you here from Las Vegas? Are you here from Las Vegas?
I called them vultures.
It was really It was very distasteful.
Grief profiteers is what I call them. Yeah, it was WSYX in Columbus, and I just the ABC. It was ABC News affiliate.
ABC.
Yeah, and I put it up on Twitter. I put it up on Facebook. My husband actually wrote an email to the general manager. I mean, it was disgusting.
I'm
going to
retweet that. You got a picture of the vultures. You snapped a picture?
No, we didn't snap a picture.
Oh, you just mentioned it.
Yeah, we should have. But I mean, it was just, there was a lot of traffic. We had several flights coming in all at the same time, so we were all being pushed down the same escalator, just by flow of traffic.
Yeah.
And they were up against the escalator, and you only had this much space to go. And I remember being hit in the face with the lights and thinking, what is going on? And then the lady sticking the microphone in my face. And I just looked at her like, you are reprehensible. I just...
First off, you're in Columbus, Ohio, so you can sort of think of the thought process of, we're not in Las Vegas. Somehow we've got to make ourselves relevant and be part of this news stream. What can we do? Yeah. Oh, well, there are planes that come in from Las Vegas. Let's go to the airport.
There just happened to be a flight landing from Las Vegas the same time we came in.
Oh, and the pretense that they're sort of staging and pumping in, it's almost staging and acting without saying we're going to stage and act.
Oh, absolutely.
Hey, we're over here with cameras and lights. Hey, did you come from Vegas?
That's why, war profiteers, I called them grief profiteers. It's just disgusting.
It's like busking or something in the subway, or panhandling almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Eliciting certain... What is it? What is it that they're hoping to get? So they're hoping to get
ratings.
somebody.
That's what they're hoping to get.
They're hoping
money
to get
and
somebody
ratings.
that gets off of a Vegas plane that gets the context enough to engage in it, and puts on enough of a show to give something worthy enough to go on the ABC affiliate.
Emotionally break down on camera spontaneously.
They just did it. Oh, good job! Way to go.
Feed the voyeurism.
So if a party, if I could, just going down the party thing, of course. I hear what you're saying, and we know that George Washington warned us ages ago about the evils of the party system, I had always thought that if there was a party that was going to make a difference, my dream was a constitutionalist party. That's why I was so freaked out and excited when you came on the radar, and I thought that I might have a chance to meet you and talk to you, because this is something that I've been saying like over cocktails and barbecue and, you know, in meetings and stuff for years. I've been saying to people when they bring up that third party thing, oh, it's going to take, they're going to have to break the two-party system. And I would interject, well, I believe that if there is one that's going to do it, it's going to be a constitutionalist party.
We should be constitutionalist voters.
Yeah, that's the point.
I think when I think about it, Washingtonian, you know, non-party would be the most libertarian-minded position, right? Because it's purely the individual. I mean, it should be Americans making their choice. As it is now, we have a system where, regardless of what kind of party, we have a gatekeeper for our vote. It's not us making a voice. We have to go through, if you make it the most right party, the most right platform, it's just this assumption that we need some organization to be the go-between for us to make our voice heard in a representative government. And in fact, the way the party system is built, the parties have hijacked the electoral system. In fact, like the primaries, for instance, those are not civic functions. Those are private party functions. We nominate, you're nominating within whatever party structure, within that organization. The private corporate club, you're nominating the person to represent that party, and then that party goes to the general election, and they're telling you who you are allowed to vote for. In fact, I remember I looked at the ballot these last couple of times, and we had this conversation as I'm staring at the ballot, and it had a limited number of names. It's sort of the nominees for the parties were on the ballot. And I distinctly recall in previous years, you would hear all the names, the nominees of the parties and this and that, and then you'd get to your ballot. And there were all these, here's 35 other names that you never heard of. So it used to be anybody was put on the ballot, and that's when you made your choice. And now I noticed this last time that all those folks weren't on the ballot. And I know there were more people that put their name in for president, running for president, than who was on my ballot. But it was only the major parties that were on there. Here's
the irony. We have such an aversion these days to corporatism. And the libertarian parties are anti-corporatism. The Democrats are, the 1%, the corporation is the evil and that whole thing. And yet people don't stop to think about the fact that political parties are not government entities. They're private corporate clubs. And so private corporate clubs run America's government.
Down to their charter, down to their articles of incorporation.
Right. Well, they're a not-for-profit as well. So they're able to discriminate based for exceptions in the 1968 Civil Rights Act. They don't have to. They are able to discriminate based on their party platform, which means you can't claim to be a Republican and demand a right to be in part of the Democrat Party. I'm a Republican. I want to be a member of your party. Well, because they have the authority to discriminate based on the principles because they're of their membership, because they are a private corporate club. Sort of makes you wonder why Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell ever get to stay Republicans, because they're contrary to the membership qualifications. But they could kick them out because they're a private corporate club. And we have these private corporate clubs. While we're hating on corporatism, we got private corporate clubs that are literally making the laws in America, enforcing the laws in America, appointing judges, sitting as judges, heads of agencies, presidents. I mean, the president is not the leader of America. He's the leader of a private corporate club.
As I watch your talks and your classes and got ready for your visit, a recurring theme that I notice is when it gets to come time to Q&A and people in the audience talking to you, there's a reoccurring theme of reaching out to you for an answer. Like it always seems like this is on my mind. The Dakota pipeline, marijuana. Guns. There's things that I've watched, in seeing you on YouTube, and these people stand up and they ask a question. You can tell that this is what is circling them. This is their orbit is this thing, and they ask you, and it's almost like they're asking there's almost sort of a salvation that they're asking for, like, from you. How does that make you feel? I've noticed a pattern in how you respond, but what are you feeling? First of all, do you feel that they're reaching out to you? Do you feel that search for an answer? I
think that it's the search for the answer. I don't think that it's a reaching out to me. Okay. I think they're reaching out into a place where they have come to trust. Mm-hmm. For
it's like you're an
response.
Antenna. You're a transmitter for the Constitution.
Well, and that's what I would hope they would see.
Yeah.
Right. Because they're always asking me, KrisAnne, what's your opinion on this? What do you think about this? And I always respond the same way. My thoughts and opinions are irrelevant to how things, how you should see this. What is relevant is what are the facts and what is the truth. So I get really annoyed with all the talking heads that we see, my opinion and this, that, or the other. I don't teach my opinions. My classes are, I work very, very hard to make sure that my classes are void of my opinion. I am more of a facilitator of history and of fact than I am, I don't know what.
Well, you're teaching people to fish. You're teaching people to fish. You're not fishing for them.
Right.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to speak for you, but
no, I think that's right.
It appears that you're teaching them to fish through the Constitution and find their own way. I
think that phenomenon is just part of human nature. I mean, you see that so many, just like the presidential elections and Congress and all this sort of thing. We just have this tendency to want to look for somebody to save us. Mm-hmm. And there's this sort of messianic outreach.
Yeah.
That's natural, and I think, to me, that's the essence of the message of liberty. Is you've been given this liberty, which has personal responsibility, accountability, sovereignty, gives you the ability to govern yourself, to provide for yourself, to stand up for yourself, to formulate your own answers and opinions. And it seems to me, I think of it when I hear that, I'm sitting there musing in the back, and I've often thought, I wonder if you sort of wound the clock back to early America, would that be, the response of seeking that person to save us? I mean, you remember even in the debates about the Constitution, the tons of anti-federalists and different people that said, we don't need any kind of federal government. We can provide for ourselves. We can take care of ourselves. So it seems like there may have been a self-sufficiency that we've lost.
It's covered in your classes. You speak about how at a given time, when you're talking about a different document or instrument, you've referenced in your talks that if we were back then, if we were there,
you'd already know the answer.
They'd already know it. Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Well, what they didn't do, they didn't go to Madison's and say, give us your opinion, right? They said, what did Hobbes say about this? What did Montesquieu say about this? What did Locke say about this?
Yeah. What are those self-evident truths?
What are those self-evident truths? What do we know about how government works with people throughout histories?
Yeah.
And what can we do to learn from the mistakes and improve on the function of government in the society of people, so that we don't have to repeat the errors of our forefathers.
Right. I see that we are a society now fixated on personality rather than principle, and that's what I see her trying to combat. So she's injecting. It's not about look to, Congressman so and so or President this to save you. Look at these principles that are self-evident, that have proven themselves right and true.
So you can
for
save
generations.
Yourself.
Right. And hold your government accountable. Not, hey, I like this guy and we'll let him do it, or I don't like this guy and we'll go against him.
That's why our motto is always liberty over security, principle over party, and truth over personality. Because just because somebody works for the federal government, a congressman or a House rep or a senator or a president or a Supreme Court justice, we in the American psyche have elevated these people to aristocracy or deity, even infallibility. And when you call into question someone that people hold to high respect, then all of a sudden you're the bad guy.
Yes.
You're attacking them. I mean, it happens to me all the time.
Well, that's the staph infection that our country has. That's our systemic.
Right.
Right. I know that my time is limited with you. You have an engagement tonight. Is Ann Arbor? Is that right? Or
Let me tell you. I'll be in Livonia.
Livonia.
At the Elks Lodge.
Okay.
And we're going to be doing the state sovereignty class at 6:30.
Okay.
Tomorrow I will be in Ann Arbor. Doing the genealogy class, the history of the Constitution, at the Travis Point Country Club at 6 p.m. Then. On Saturday, I'm going to be involved in a conference in Delaware, Ohio, where we'll be doing genealogy and state sovereignty. We will be in Findlay on Monday.
Okay.
Doing state sovereignty again at the American Legion Post in Findlay. And then Tuesday, oh my goodness, we're going to be here forever. Tuesday, we'll be in Westerville, Ohio, at the Old Bag of Nails restaurant. Is that a cool name?
Yeah.
Doing state sovereignty there. And then Thursday, we'll be in Toledo doing state sovereignty at Black Kite Coffee and Pies. Ooh, coffee shop. And then Friday, we'll be in Greenville, Ohio, at the Christian Lighthouse Center doing state sovereignty again.
Okay.
And I'll be in Sydney on Saturday doing my 5-hour workshop. So then we go on to Sandpoint, Idaho after that. But all of this is, anybody who's interested in coming to any of these classes or getting their friends or family members to come to the classes, they just need to go to my website, KrisAnneHall.com, and then click on the event calendar. And so we not only give you the events, the dates and the times, we even give you directions. You can access a map and all this other stuff. So you see,
very cool.
See our
nice
calendar right there.
Yep. KrisAnneHall.com.
Yeah. Oh, there's your YouTube interview right there in studio.
Awesome. I made the calendar.
Yeah.
Isn't that awesome? If I can, I would just be remiss if I didn't before you go. What state are we in? Okay, so where are we? How far gone are we? And what is your talks are about, you mentioned Solomon's quote that there's nothing new under the sun, right? And I agree. There's nothing new. Everything, history repeats. There's nothing.
So you've had the
new.
Genealogy class. You've listened to the genealogy class.
Yeah.
So you know how precisely we are repeating history. Precisely.
Yes, I understand that. But what I wanted to ask you before you go is, what's missing to me is these instruments. So you take us through in your genealogy class where all these documents, these instruments, these conventions come in, and they cure. Right? They seek to cure the problem that's occurring at the time, right? We seem to be void of a cure. Where is our cure for however bad our world is right now, however far we've strayed from the Constitution, with law schools saying that it's practically irrelevant, and the way that we're teaching and the way that we're not teaching? What is the instrument that solves us? What corrects it? Beyond the individual effort, because these things that you cite, connecting the dots, these historical things, these are grand gestures. These are documents. These are legal instruments. What is it? And I know you can't predict the future, but damn, you've connected all these dots. Can you give me something? What happens? What needs to happen to slap us in the face, to get us?
Well, I think looking at history.
Is that a fair question?
Yeah, no, it's a very fair question. It's a very good question, as a matter of fact. But looking through those histories, the documents were not actually the cure. They had violent revolution. And the only way you got those documents was to hold a sword at the king's throat.
Okay, so that.
But that's not our solution.
That's my next question, KrisAnne.
So you got to let me.
Yes, please.
We intentionally did not create a kingdom. So the greatest thing, one of the greatest gifts that our framers gave us was not declaring independence from Great Britain, but declaring independence from kings forever. Because they knew with a king, the only way to get government back under control, the only way to get government back focused on the people was to hold a sword at the king's throat.
Okay.
And they did not want to have to do that.
Okay.
So that's why they created a constitutional republic instead of a kingdom. They didn't create a democracy. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, but I have a video on YouTube that explains why America's not a democracy. But they didn't create a democracy. They didn't create a kingdom. They could have. I mean, there were people begging George Washington to be king.
Sure.
And so they said, no, we're going to do a constitutional republic. Why? Because we want our posterity to be able to hold the reins of government and to guide and control the government without war.
Right.
And that's what they gave us. The problem here, Samuel Adams tells us the problem. He says, so what we have to understand is the whole focus for the creation of America was on one thing, liberty. How do we secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity? Well, we do it through a constitutional republic. But it has to be more than that, because the lady, I forget her name all the time, asks Benjamin Franklin, what kind of government did you give us? He says, a republic, if you can keep it.
If you can keep it.
So the republic was the mechanism by which the people have control over their government without going to war. But Samuel Adams said this: no people will tamely surrender their liberties or easily be subdued when knowledge is diffused and virtue is preserved. He said, but on the contrary, when the people become universally ignorant and debauched in their manners, they will sink underneath their own weight without the aid of foreign invaders. America is sinking because of our universal ignorance to liberty, to the power that the people, the power and responsibility the people have, to controlling their own government, and the requirement of self-governance that goes along with a constitutional republic.
I think in that context, that what I've heard her say many times in relation to that, the ignorance, the specific ignorance. So they gave us a republic. They threw off monarchies to eliminate that notion that we have to go to revolution to fix it. So if we don't want to use revolution to fix it, if we don't want to have to do that, then we have to use the mechanisms that they gave us. So what has happened progressively is those mechanisms that were put in place to be the levers of control, they've been corrupted. So then
forgotten.
So what she's teaching are those particular mechanisms. So that's where the focus has to be, to regain those things and fix those things so that we can control it in the way we're supposed to. So you're talking about the sovereignty of the states has been laid down. The 16th Amendment was part of destroying that.
Right.
The funding of the federal government was supposed to be a major mechanism, the taxes and the withholding of taxes by the people. So the 16th Amendment bypassed individuals and
state
states
control,
withholding taxes to the federal government.
Right.
And then we have the House, so not only the ignorant populace, but the ignorant people that we elect or people with ulterior motives in the House of Representatives who are supposed to control the tax and funding mechanism. So those are some of the targets of making people aware of the concepts of state sovereignty and then regaining those mechanisms. Attacking the 17th Amendment, the 16th Amendment, getting the House to do its job in defunding and controlling and financing the federal government properly. So those are some of our focuses. And then, of course, you've got on the local level, again, within the context of state sovereignty, the power of the sheriff and dealing with those issues. And I think something we were just talking about, the fair tax and things like that, are mechanisms to try to get at those things. So there are various remedies and organizations who are targeting these things, but we have to be focused on those control mechanisms that we were given by the designers of the Constitution.
The tools are right there.
They're right there. Here's the thing. People come to me, they're overwhelmed. And I mean desperately overwhelmed.
Yeah, I can see it in your talk.
People are like, how do we fix this? The most asked question I get, everybody agrees, even on both sides of, all sides of political spectrum, everybody agrees the federal government is out of control for different reasons. And the most asked question I get is, what do we do? Well, here's the thing. If we'd been teaching the Constitution properly for the last 150 years, we'd already know what to do, because the mechanisms to control the federal government are the same mechanisms that existed in 1798 when they ratified the Constitution.
Absent of that, we haven't been. So now people are asking you, KrisAnne Hall, this transmitter of the word of the Constitution, they're asking you, what do we do? You know, what's the nuclear option? You've
okay,
actually
so
just
that's
touched
the
on,
problem. There is no nuclear option.
That's the problem.
There is no quick fix.
Is there? But you just mentioned, you touched on the county sheriff, the sheriff, the state, and then is the Second Amendment relative? Does it exist relative to the preamble of the Declaration of Independence?
Of course.
Well, of course.
Does it? You say that. You say, of course, but you don't have that many people. If you say that, there's an entire section of the population that will say that you're crazy if you say that.
It doesn't make it not true.
It doesn't make it not true.
So thank you. It's true, right? I'm not crazy.
But
Thank you.
But so does freedom of speech.
That just made your visit worth it, because people have been calling me a madman for connecting that. Like, I connect it like case law.
Okay, well, here, let me connect it for you better. It's not case law. It's natural law.
Natural law.
Samuel Adams wrote an essay in 1792 called The Rights... No, 17... Okay, so I can't remember what year now. Called The Rights of Man.
We have a Google machine, I can tell you.
Yeah, right. Okay, so Samuel Adams' Rights of Man. 1792 was James Madison, but...
1791?
Oh, no, that's Thomas Paine. Type up there Samuel Adams.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. Rights of the Colonists.
Samuel
Adams. Rights of the Colonists. There it is, right there.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Right there. How cool is that? Woohoo. 1772, not 92. So 1772, Samuel Adams wrote this essay called The Rights of the Colonists. He said, among the natural rights of the colonists are these. First, a right to life. Secondly, liberty. Third, property. I think it's, third to property. Fourth, together. See? Among the natural rights of the colonists are these. First, a right to life. Secondly, liberty. Thirdly, to property. Together. Number 4, with the right to support and defend them in the best manner they can.
Best manner they can. That's the best manner they can. Any means possible.
But the Second Amendment is not about self-defense from criminals.
No,
okay?
it's not.
The right to keep and bear arms. Number 1, you don't have a Second Amendment right. Because your right to keep and bear arms does not come from the Second Amendment. It comes from natural law.
KrisAnne, why did they screw up that comma so bad?
Why? Because
Intent and ignorance.
We have an intentional ignorance perpetrated on the American people. Because you see,
in the authoring of that sentence, you're saying there was an intentional?
No, in how we teach it.
Oh, okay.
How we teach it.
You defend that there's nothing wrong with it as written.
No.
And I agree too. It's English. If you can speak the King's English,
but it's about the key to that. It's about the context. See, this is the thing. You don't have just a constitution. So many of these federal supremacists, are guys like, okay, here's this single piece of paper, the Constitution. That's what we have to go on. And then when you don't look beyond that, you don't look, as they say, beyond the 4 corners of the document. Then they're able to manipulate you with, the comma's here and this and that and the other. The thing is, it's not just that document. Along with that document, you have journals and journals and journals and journals of the guys who actually constructed it, saying, here's why we wrote it, and every sentence, here's what it means. And in fact, I think in the Second Amendment in particular, it was initially combined in a broader amendment. They separated this, I think, the second and the third.
The second and third and fourth amendments were one amendment as it came out of Virginia.
Which gives you an even clearer context of what their intent was.
Yeah,
when
to
they
package
wrote it.
Those. If you're as the packaging in the First Amendment.
So, I mean, like, you write a letter to your girlfriend. So we need to get the neighbors and, people from Uruguay to come and try to figure out what you meant. Why not ask you? What if you wrote a letter to your girlfriend and then you wrote a book about that letter saying what you meant in that letter? That's exactly what they did with the Constitution. We don't have to debate it. We don't have to conjecture. Let's go pick up the writings of the people who actually designed this thing, and let's ask them what they meant and what their intent was.
And they teach us the solutions, those levers, too. They right there in the writings, they tell us what we're supposed to be doing to correct this. This state sovereignty class that I'm going to be teaching all for the next 10 days here in Michigan, Ohio, is the solution.
Okay.
It is the solution they put into our hands.
Yeah.
Because first and foremost, we have been so deceived to think that the only check and balance in the federal government are the agency's internal checks and balances. Our framers were not so stupid to think that the only check of government was the government to check itself. So the greatest check on federal government, as it was created and intended to be, was the states and the people within those states to hold the federal government to its limitations. But we don't know what the meaning of the word state is anymore. We don't understand that powers are delegated, not surrendered. We don't understand the importance and relevance of the word reserved. We don't even understand the reason the states were created, much less what that word means anymore. And so what we do in this state sovereignty class is we take what they wrote, and we take their history, and we connect those dots. We start over with a whole new foundation, because our foundation is corrupted. It's cracked. It's worthless.
Do you have any aims to maybe publish that as a text?
Yes. Actually,
maybe make that available? Because it seems like people would buy it.
We'd hope so. We have a book called Sovereign Duty that teaches all of that.
I think that if you can make a state, what you're talking about, as much of a text form as you possibly could, it seems like institutions would buy it and at least have it.
You would think so, but it's contrary to what most people want to think, because it teaches self-sufficiency, and it teaches that the states have to operate on their own and not be addicted to the federal money and the federal help.
Yeah, the book's called Sovereign Duty.
It is a book. We've published it. It's called Sovereign Duty.
All right.
We're also going to
be... It's on Amazon. I saw your Amazon page.
We also have Liberty First University. You can do your little thing. Go to libertyfirstuniversity.com.
Okay. I think I heard you talk about that.
Liberty First.
There it is. You had it up there earlier.
Oh, did I? First?
University. There it is.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, libertyfirstuniversity.com.
Yep, that's me.
All right.
All right, so this is a complete online training.
Okay.
Self-paced.
Oh, okay.
So that you can find out, basically, for 6 years, people have been asking me, how do we get what you're teaching without you coming? Because I was teaching over 260 classes in over 22 states every year.
Jesus.
We were home maybe 1 week a month, and it just, we couldn't do it anymore. Just can't.
I need to internet this.
So we take this university, Liberty First University, and we have taken the classes that I teach, and we put them in this format. It's a small membership fee.
Okay.
And the classes have, there you go, there's no
Since
Webster.
rights don't come from documents.
Can they see it, hear this?
Americans do
They
not
can hear it for
have
sure.
a Second Amendment right.
So this is just right to bear arms. Okay, so you have these divided out. You have them sliced out into different. Okay.
So this is actually one of the free videos that we have up, and it's a preview of the Second Amendment class.
Right to bear arms.
Right. So
Apropos.
there are actually 4 in that Right to Bear Arms series. And if you go to my Facebook page today, we are actually posting those 4 videos throughout the day to help people get educated and equipped to handle the lies about the right to keep and bear arms.
Okay.
But Liberty First University is a startup right now. We have 5 courses. Each course has anywhere from 5 to 9 classes within that course. So we're talking, we have 45, 50 classes already up.
And that's already going. You got those all filmed and
they're already up there.
Guys.
You get
awesome.
you get a downloadable PDF workbook to go with it.
Great.
And we're going to incorporate testing for our homeschool parents so they can have testing and use it for homeschooling curriculum.
There's a new course every couple of weeks.
And we add new courses every
Fantastic.
couple of weeks. The newest course that was just added yesterday, the day before, is a course that JC teaches on the Christian's duty to, how does that title go?
Well, I used to call it Righteous Resistance to Tyrannical Authority.
Okay.
So I used, of course, I was a pastor, and so you hear a lot in the church world. There are a lot of pastors who they don't want to talk about government, and they actually teach that religious people are not supposed to be involved in government. They're not supposed to talk about it. They're not supposed to debate it.
Right.
And so you have a tremendous amount of ignorance.
Well, you pay Caesar his due. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so they take those scriptures and twist them and things. So I walk through there's probably about 10 different texts and instances in the scripture that I show that are just, I mean, and not complicated. I just so on the face of it that just contradicts this stuff and how what these guys are teaching cannot possibly be true. And in light of the whole context and the everything presented on that topic in the scripture, here's what it must mean. And so I, just walk through that and basically, and so it's not strictly a Christian, this is just for Christians or whatever. It's anybody. I think it demonstrates the duty of any moral person of what your stance, what your position, and what your action, ought to be in relation to the tyranny.
The duty you have to not just to yourself, but to the future.
Sure, I get it.
So Liberty First University,
LibertyFirstUniversity.com.
Yes,
KrisAnneHall.com.
It is the huge. It is going to be huge, and
Yeah.
I'm really, really hoping. It's like you said, people are reaching out, asking for the solutions.
And this is you.
We're giving you those tools.
This is amazing, and the body of work that you've already in just a short time assembled. That's powerful.
Can I mention this? What I was saying, what we said earlier about referring to the designers and drafters of the document and what their intent was. A lot of people just dismiss that. Oh, these bigoted white guys, slave owners, that sort of thing. Their reasoning, and it's not just because they thought it was a good idea. They drew on 1,000 years of history, and they pointed to documents and events. That's part of what his history presentation is about.
Yeah.
And so that's a part of that ignorance today. All of the mainstream media and the progressive, all they want people to know is Jefferson and Washington owned slaves. Therefore, all of the founders were bigots and racist. So you can't trust anything they say. And so by extension, you can't trust the Constitution. It has to be flawed because it was written by, these wicked men. Okay. And so I think that's important that's why it's important to have this whole picture that our founding documents and our republic as a consequence is not built upon these men. It's built upon the principles, as they refer to, the self-evident principles that they drew upon from 1,000 years, the cauldron of history.
Right. They didn't whip it up right there on this parchment paper.
No.
This was,
No, we had one very famous talking head whom I will not mention.
Conservative.
A conservative talking head whom I will not mention, said that our founders were just winging it when they created America.
Why would they say that?
Because they're ignorant.
Well,
it's that ignorance.
Well,
what's the energy behind that?
I can tell you what some of it is. There is a group of folks that want to focus on the men. They have this sort of bent that their version they want to show is this sort of divine, miraculous, kind of, weird, super spiritual sort of interpretation of history, and so they almost deify.
No causality. Things
men,
just sort of blossomed through time.
Just boom, it just exploded. So I think for them that builds, in their view, a stronger position because it's this miraculous thing. But the fact is that then would only appeal to those people who have that mindset. So someone who's already spiritually minded, the Christian, that sort of religious right or whatever segment. So it's a very niche sort of teaching.
Yeah. But then it breeds that error because you see people quoting things like the framers will talk about the Constitution and our republic as a grand experiment. And I don't know if it's because of lack of proper education in our schools or the lack of emphasis on science. But as a former biochemist, I understand what that means. When in the mind of people who are maybe not in that niche, the winging it sort of resonates with experiment, in which people think an experiment is just something you sort of cook up and see what happens. But that's not an experiment, that's an explosion, right? So when you're in a laboratory and you're actually conducting an experiment, you take something that you know everything about, or you can possibly know about it. You take another thing and you know everything you can possibly know about that. And before you combine them, you work out all the numbers in paper and theory, and you theorize what exactly will happen when you put them together. You don't throw them together, see what happens. You throw them together to prove what you think's going to happen will happen.
Yeah, because you're applying and testing principles, axiomatic truths.
Right, because our framers didn't just go, well, let's see what happens, we'll wing it. They took everything they could possibly know about human nature and history. They took everything they know about government and how people operate, and they debated it. You know, most people don't realize that it took 13 years from the Declaration of Independence and the creation of our states till we get our Constitution today.
Yeah, 13 years.
13 years these people debated what was going to happen when we put all this together and worked out all the details.
I fear that sometimes people think that that's so far, that they're so far removed. I get scared and frustrated with people's perception that they are so far apart.
Right.
A big principle, passion of mine, if I'm talking about it, is the relevance to each other. There's relevance, that they're supported by each other.
Well, and I think that's the experiment. The experiment is what Franklin said. The experiment's not the content of the documents. The experiment is if you can keep it.
How long will you keep it?
You know, it's about the people. That's
My
the
frustration comes with people who believe or want to believe that the only fix is to pick up the sword. You see, here's the thing. They sacrificed so much. I mean, everything they sacrificed so we wouldn't have to do that.
Okay.
And we have yet to even have begun to employ the mechanisms of control that they designed for us to keep us from revolution.
Way before the sword. You feel that there's so much. And in talking to you, I thank you, because I'm opening my eyes to that. Like, whereas I was sort of, you know, revolutionary, like on the cuff, like what, like I'm asking, not that I'm going to start a revolution, but like that's always my question. Like, is the button, is the Second Amendment the reset button?
I'm in the same place. I was in the same place.
But to hear you talk and stress that there's these mechanisms that as a civilization, as a society, that they're laid out for us. I get it. I'm hearing it.
They're more than laid out. They are in our hands.
I hear you.
But we have been blinded by miseducation, by lies, by propaganda, by provocateurs and liars for so long.
And we're misfocused.
And we're not focused right either, right? We don't even see what's in our hands. We've become so federal dependent that our whole lives have become federal centric. So we look to the federal government to fix all our problems, but we also look to the federal government as being the source of all our problems.
Yeah,
insane.
And notice
now you're getting that insane thing.
When we talk about the mechanisms before, electing the right president was not one of those solutions.
No.
I mean, that's the one thing.
He's a stooge.
We're focused.
Admittedly a stooge, right, in the framing.
But any one of them, it doesn't matter. You get the best guy. That's not the fix they put in. Yeah. Remember the president.
No, I just mean in conception. He's an ambassador. He's just
He's just an ambassador on behalf of the states. That's all he is.
You hear people, I vote, and what's the sense of voting? As if that's the only solution. And only thing.
But when they say I vote, what they're really saying is I vote in the federal elections. Yeah. But if you actually took an educated vote in your county commission, in your city council, in your sheriff,
your school board,
in your school board, right? I teach people, if the world was perfect according to KrisAnne Hall.
Here we go.
Okay?
Yeah.
You would ignore federal elections for the next 6 years.
Wow.
Because it doesn't matter what you vote. They're not going to do anything different in 6 years' time.
Wouldn't that be something? Sort of clear the residue of the process?
Right. So, no, you don't donate $1 to a federal representative.
Wow.
Donate a dollar. Do not donate a single dollar to a senator or to a presidential campaign.
Wow.
For 6 years. So then what you do is you take all those resources, time and money, and you funnel them into your local government.
Local, municipal.
Okay? Yes.
Yeah.
In 2 years, 3 years, you can have a constitutionally minded city council, county commission, school board, and sheriff. 4 years, you've got that sealed up, right? Just 4 years of concentrating on the local government. And in those 4 years, you have now created a crucible of people who are experienced in government, who are constitutionally astute and dedicated, and you can choose from that crucible now to send people to your state houses.
Right.
Okay? So in those next 2 years, you revamp your House and your Senate, and you replace your governor. And if you get your state to be constitutionally minded, state and local government, you don't care what the federal government's doing. That's how powerful it is, because your state, being constitutionally minded, will tell the federal EPA you have no jurisdiction within our state.
Right,
tell
they'll
the
exercise
ATF,
that.
Yes, exactly. The ATF, no, you have no jurisdiction here. And then we're on the road to recovery.
Wow, I feel so much better. I feel so much better that you said that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know the challenge, and here's
because that's
what you got to
totally
fight
possible.
against.
Yeah,
you know
this is the
You know what
challenge.
you have to fight against? the fear from the ingrained tribalism that they've foisted upon us.
Yeah, but I think everything she said is doable.
Yeah,
everything you
absolutely,
Yes, absolutely.
absolutely.
Like
So you have to convince the people that say, but KrisAnne, if I ignore the federal election, if I don't vote, then the other side will get their people in. It's the tribalism is what you're always.
But there is no difference on
fighting
sides
against.
anymore.
blackjack thing. We just went through this with the last presidential election. This
Yep.
game of blackjack, this bluffing.
Exactly.
That can't happen.
So that's what
But it
you
happens
have to
less at a
shift.
municipal level,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, no. It's not that it happens less at a municipal level.
Okay.
But you have more control.
But you have more control,
Okay.
right?
'Cause you're
Do you
closer.
have more control over your
By numbers, yeah.
sheriff
By
or,
numbers.
or Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General?
You're saying by numbers,
Right.
By
Absolutely.
locality and by
yeah, by
number.
proximity.
By proximity.
right?
Yeah.
And
Because-
that's the way the constitutional republic was designed, so that the majority of the power
Boots on the
remained
ground.
in the states
Yeah.
where the people had all the control.
How many people can take off work to travel to DC?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No.
But you
Yeah.
can get a lot more people. Hey, there's a city
Yeah.
council meeting at 5:30.
You can go to your city council member's house. He probably lives 4 blocks away.
I tell you, in our educated areas and areas where people are involved,
Bring
on
him
a
a
local
batch
level,
of cookies and say, "Hey, man, let's sit down and talk."
These lines for these votes are filled up. I mean, for small stuff.
Yeah.
It's not like there's a epidemic of laziness. I've been to the polls thinking, oh, I'm early enough. I'll get here. Right after I drop my son off, I'll go right there, and thinking I'm ahead of the game. There's lines. There's people are voting. So if you can sort of calibrate that,
You
towards
focus them in the right
Yes.
direction. Yeah, absolutely.
Those
Here's the
folks.
crazy thing, right? You have all this opportunity to change on the local level. Here's the irony. Those who are trying to destroy America already know that. They have already taken over our local governments with the United Nations, UNESCO, ICLEI. All of these progressives have moved into to take over the local communities first, while those who are constitutionally minded and liberty professed are all focused on the federal government, which is the gulf which swallows all.
Yeah, you've made a brilliant point.
Jefferson, that's Jefferson's quote, that Washington, D.C. would be the gulf which is to swallow all. And we are just throwing all of our resources and our time into a black hole of nothingness while America is being transformed right underneath our noses at the local level by the enemy.
But even on the local level, you have to have that mind shift. You can't let them use the vote as an anesthetic,
Right.
Because they don't mind that you vote. They're glad. They're happy that there are those long lines. What they don't want is after you vote, showing up to those council meetings.
Oh, yeah.
The
We've seen
fact
this
of the matter
district to
is,
district too.
here's the hard truth. If you voted in every election, and
Yeah.
you've never been to a city council meeting, a county commission meeting,
A school board meeting.
you're not participating.
You're not no.
Self-governing.
Okay.
Voting alone only gets them in office. And if that's all the people do, then you're telling them, we're giving you permission to do whatever you want to do because we're not going to pay any attention after that. And the people who are paying attention are the special interests and lobbyists.
Yeah.
They're always there while the people are on the sidelines. So if
I
voting
voted
is
for
all
you.
we do, if all you have that little sticker, then you're not participating.
Right.
You
In
know.
the spirit of the experiment analogy, that would be that would be the data gathering, the monitoring of the experiment. That's the
Right.
extension of
Absolutely.
the spirit of the experiment.
Right.
No, we know this to be true from the results. So we have, through our training and through, there's another group called Center for Self-Governance. They actually come in and hold a series of classes. I do federal teaching. They do state teaching. They'll teach you on your state constitution, how to get involved locally, how to actually get control of city council, county commission, school board meetings and stuff like that. They're the local guys on the ground. It's called Center for Self-Governance. Yeah. So anyway, yep, that's them.
Yeah, simple. Centerforselfgovernance.com.
Mark Herr is a really good friend of ours. We believe in what they're doing. They're doing really, really great things. And here's the thing. We have worked together to train people now on the limited role of the federal government, the requirements of the state and local government. These people have started going to their city council meetings. Well, now that we have educated people going to city council meetings, we're watching city councils try to change the times of their meetings so people can't come, to create to create rules of procedure so that people cannot speak on certain terms. You'll see video after video,
which is evidence of what I just said.
Yeah.
They have no problem with you voting.
Right. They just don't want.
Where the real control is you showing up.
Right. You see videos on YouTube where parents are showing up to school board meetings and objecting to what the school board is doing and being carted out by police officers for simply exercising their right to control their government.
Absurd. That's absurd.
Because now it's become a norm.
Because they got used to not being
expectation,
controlled.
exactly, that we're not there.
Wow.
But this is your greatest control.
Listen, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. Thank you so much for your time. Like, I sincerely appreciate it.
Oh, we're happy.
This is what I started this for, is ordinary people, day-to-day people doing extraordinary things. That's really sort of the premise for the Timkast. And when I found out that I had the opportunity to have you over, I was just floored, and I'm so grateful for you guys coming. One last thing. Will you use this platform, the Timkast, to announce your presidency?
Actually, there were people who made buttons for me to run in 20.
I mean, I just thought we had the microphones and the cameras.
2012.
I thought maybe.
Yeah. There were people who had buttons for me to run in 2012. It's
Did
funny.
somebody want you to get on a ticket with Adam Kokesh for non-president?
Oh yeah, no, they're right. They're now I'm for non-president to be on the ticket. No, because the president is not the fix.
Right. Right.
The president is not the fix. You can elect me to president, but president is not the fix.
Right.
And
my vote is for no president.
And even that thought pattern is bad. That's sort of part of the systemic.
Right.
Like we need to build that out of our thinking.
But through Liberty First University.
Yeah.
The number of people that we can reach, the people that we have already reached over the last 6 years, we have trained people who ran for local government, for Congress, for sheriff, people who've been through my courses and said, you know what, now I'm ready to do this. I'm going to run for office.
Wow.
And I think that we are changing the course of America one person at a time, because that's how history pivots anyway. When you're a historian and you study history, you know that the major events in history always pivot on one person. So we're out there trying to find that one person upon which history will pivot. And I think we're making the waves. I've been on the Southern Poverty Law Center's list of anti-government extremist groups for 2 years now.
Really?
Oh, yeah. 997 actual groups and me. I'm the only individual on the list.
A group.
I am an anti-government extremist group
You're
that
a little too bootstrappy for them?
Yeah, teaches hate. I am not a hate group, but I teach others to hate. That's how they make that classification. Okay. I am also... I've been on C-SPAN now twice. Mm-hmm. One was their 3-hour in-depth interview,
which is fantastic.
Yeah.
In spite of all of this, I am still shunned by Fox, CNN, MSNBC, and all of the talking heads.
The Washington Post follow you around for a couple weeks.
Oh yeah, I had a Washington Post. The Washington Post did an actual piece just on me.
I'll have to look that up.
And we're
you're
still
a problem
shunned,
for those outlets. You're a problem because you are a Christian, but you aren't exclusive. Like you're a real problem for some of those.
Yeah, they
news
want
outlets.
you to be a caricature.
Yeah, you're not.
I'm
you're
not.
You're not. No, you're speaking the truth. You're talking about historical data.
I don't speak opinion, so they know they can't trip me up.
Refuse to. It's sort of a principle of yours is to not interject your opinion.
What's exciting though is all the young people we're seeing.
Yes,
getting involved. Just
awesome.
huge groups of young people. That's really exciting as we travel, because we go to places and you see where you're at, and so a lot of places we go they don't see the young people, so then they extrapolate that to the rest of the country, and they'll be depressed and discouraged, and no, the young people aren't engaged. And I said, no, that's just simply because you're here, and maybe they're not here. But man, we are seeing tons of young people.
And you're traveling with the young people.
Yeah.
You're traveling with the future of the country right here.
So that's
I'm glad
exciting.
that your son was able to make it. That's awesome.
He's homeschooled, so he goes with us everywhere.
There's coming a day of reckoning where there's a next generation not going to put up with this.
No, we are creating a counterculture to the millennial right now. There's a whole total counterculture to the snowflakes who are simply going to stand up for their liberty because they've been educated, and they're not going to tolerate what we have been conditioned for decades to tolerate.
Yeah.
And that's the real, I mean, you want to know the real pinpoint solution, that's it, that's raising up the future to not accept the servitude that we have accepted for ourselves.
Well, it's always the answer, the same answer. We have to be men and women strong enough to plant seeds, the shade of which we will never enjoy, right? We have to we have to plant those seeds. So,
Right.
and you seem to be planting a tremendous amount of seeds. Thank you for not just coming in here, but for this mission and the calling that you've taken on. I'll be watching you very closely, and I hope to see you again maybe sometime soon. Thank you so much for being on the Timkast.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for what you're doing, because like I said, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.